Hey, everybody.
Hello, I'm Ryan.
I'm Bethany.
And we are Ryan and Bethany Board Game Reviews.
And today we're finally here. We are finally doing our top 10 games of 2024. We're here.
Yeah, we tend to do our top 10 of the year a little bit later, January or February, because even though it's more timely at like December when everyone's talking about end of year stuff, there's just so many games that come out in any given year that we have not had a chance to play them all. And we still haven't. But we've had at least a chance to kind of finish up the ones that we've been wanting to play that are in our shelf of shame or whatever you want to call it, in our holding pattern. So we're finally caught up on all that. So we can finally bring you our thoughts on the 2024 games of the year, in our opinion.
In our humble opinion. As always, ladies first. So I will begin. My number 10 is Unconscious Minds. This is a game where you are with Freud and you're helping your patients, trying to undo their trauma and help them find catharsis. It is a really interesting game where there's an area control, but there's also kind of a really majority building thing that you're doing as well, and there's a city you're moving around. There's a lot of stuff happening in this game, but the artwork is fantastic. It's a great example of how you can have fantastic art that doesn't interrupt gameplay whatsoever. It's just a heavier game, but it is definitely a fun game.
My number 10 is a game called Things in Rings. This is it's a bizarre game that I had not yet seen before that uses a Venn diagram kind of a system. But what you're ultimately trying to do is you have one person who knows what these three rings mean. And nobody else does. And little by little, people are adding cards to the Venn diagram, and they're saying, does this fit in this category, in this particular slice? And then if not, then they have to move it to the person who does know what everything means, moves it to the correct spot. And then you're like, okay, why did they move it there? What does it have to do with? I got part of it right, but not all of it right. And you're trying to use inductive reasoning or reductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning. You're trying to use inductive reasoning, I think is the way it's worded, to try to figure out what the different rings in the Venn diagram mean as the game goes on. It is just such a weird game. It makes you think in such a weird way. I love that.
All right, my number 9 is Forges of Ravenshire. This was such a fun way to use dice. You're rolling these dice and you're putting them on the board, but as you're putting them on, you're taking an action of that spot depending on the pip number on the die, and then when you take a spot off of the board, you're also taking an action as well, and you're putting these on your own player boards, and where you place them is where you take actions, and then you move them over. So this one die is going to have such a long life moving to all these different places, and the color matters sometimes, and the pip number matters sometimes. I just think it's so cool when people use double use cards, that I think it's absolutely incredible when you can do that same mechanism, but with something like a die. I just thought it was brilliant to be able to do that.
My number 9 is Flip 7. This is a card game reminiscent of something like Blackjack, where you're trying to get as many unique numbers as possible without getting the same number dealt to you twice, and then therefore you're busting. So there's 12 12s in the deck, 10 10s, 7 7s, things like that. So the more valuable cards, the 10s, 11s, 12s, also are going to show up more often, be more likely to bust you. This game never fails to produce a ton of laughs. It's a party game that you can just play with anybody. It's not a party game; it's a card game, but you use it at parties.
Yes.
It plays like unlimited players. The box literally says if you're playing with more than 18 people, play with 2 decks. Like, when are you ever going to play this with more than 18 people? That's insane. Yeah. I would love to try just because.
I would
Mega Flip 700. Those action cards that give some twists to the whole system. It's a lot of fun.
My number 8 is Compile Main 1. And this is a card game where you have these 3 different ideas, I guess. You're an AI and you're developing who you are going to be, and so you have all these different personality traits, and you're basically competing against, it's a 2-player only game, and you're competing against your opponent to have this be the main personality. So you have 3 different areas of personality you're competing for. First person to successfully flip 2, 3. Which one?
All 3 flipped over.
All 3 flipped over. Gosh. The first person to successfully do that wins. It is really fun. There's a lot of variety in this game. We've played it so many times with so many of the different like personality traits mixing and matching. Some work together really well, and some, even though they don't work together well, it still produces a really fun game of interaction. I really loved this game.
All right, my number 8 is Patrician Tower of Influence. I considered disqualifying this because Patrician itself was a kind of an older game, and this is like a implementation of it, I suppose. But I stuck with it anyways because I really liked it then, and I really like it now. This is a game where you have these different little districts all over the city, and you are trying to use this little kind of area majority mechanism and stack these towers as you're trying to gain control of this map. It's just this tower, the way they stack and the way points are awarded are really interesting. There's a set collection mechanism of it. Some previous things that used to be expansions are now part of the actual game. It is what I would call elegant. It's got practically no rules at all. It's just play a card and whatever it says to do, do it. Stack towers in that particular area or whatever the case is. But at the same time, the way you think about it and the way you balance it and the way you have areas you're targeting, the special ability, the scoring opportunities, all things that you're weighing and measuring are varied and fun, and there's a lot to consider with the rule set being practically nothing. I really appreciate that kind of elegant design that I feel like we don't see as much anymore. Things are streamlined. We use the word streamlined a lot, but the word elegant gets less and less.
Yeah.
Has a classic feel that holds up well.
My number 7 is Sherlock Solitaire, and you heard that correctly. This is Solitaire, but with a Sherlock theme, and it plays 1 to 2 player, and I was very impressed. There's so many trick-taking games out there now. You have that idea, and people have been able to use this concept as trick-taking and like gamify it to the nth degree. So they took the concept of Solitaire or Klondike, and they gamified it, and I felt like it worked really well. It's such a small package. I can take this with me wherever I go and have a little bit of, a game wherever I'm going, and it plays that simple like every other. You need to have this, but you also need to have certain groups, and you're on one side or the other. It's very simple once you get playing with it. It was very weird the first time we played it, but afterwards it was totally fine. After that, you can play it 1 or 2 player. It was a lot of fun.
My number 7 is Isle of Cats Duel. Isle of Cats is a big game that lots of people are aware of, this polyomino thing where you're trying to fit all these different cat shapes on this boat. Duel makes it into a 2-player game. So something similar to what Seven Wonders and Seven Wonders Duel are. This is, Isle of Cats, and Isle of Cats Duel did something similar. But the way you draft your cards as well as your cats themselves has this whole drafting board that's really fun to move around on. And it's just a 2-player distilled version that still leaves a lot of, just so much snappier the way that you draft these items. It's my favorite way to play Isle of Cats. Isle of Cats is a great game, but this is so much easier to get to the table and leaves you just as satisfied.
Yeah. My number 6 is Landmarks, and this is a word association game. So you can play as teams, but typically when we've played it, we're all playing cooperatively. So you have this map, and there's 3 words that start on the map, and the person who's giving the clue puts out a new word on the map. You are trying to escape this island on a certain route. There are places on the map where like you'll lose life, where you can get goodies, all sorts of stuff. But what's happening is your other players take that word that you've placed on the map and try to figure out what the association is with the 3 other words that are already on the map. So they decide where they're going to place it, and game continues that way. For me personally, this is a Codenames killer. If I had to play a cooperative word association game, I would use this, or even a teams word association game. I would use this every time over Codenames. It killed that for me.
All right. My number 6 is Life in Reterra. This was a surprise because it came from a mass market company. I was expecting a game like this to come from a hobby company, but I like that some of those bigger companies are making hobby-style games. And this of course, is Eric Lang, so I like that there's a hobby designer behind it, which is probably why it's so much fun for me. Yeah. This is what I would call a post post-apocalyptic game. It's after the end of the world. There's all these things that you're discovering, all these like things like airplanes and radios that you have no idea what was originally used for. You're just like, I'm going to use this as a paperweight or whatever, you know. And so you're discovering all these different things as you're laying out these tiles. You're trying to kind of build out your little world. And every time you play, you have a different setup as far as what the different tiles mean and how they're going to score differently and stuff like that. So I think it's incredibly clever how you can play this game tons and tons and tons of different times. Every time a little bit different way. What everything means is going to score differently or have special abilities that are going to act differently based off which cards you chose and which tiles you chose. I think that's awesome.
My number 5 is In the Footsteps of Marie Curie, and this is a game where you're following her life and all of the achievements that she made, and you're unlocking things on your own board. What's crazy about this game is you're trying to do all this stuff, and you're trying to get all these points, but it's a very low-scoring game. So you don't think you're actually doing a lot, but you actually did do a lot, because 10 is like, yes, I did it. That's like a winning score right there. So it was... It was very linear in the way that the game happened, but I felt like it worked really well. It was a game I liked. Gosh, after my first or second turn, I just knew that I absolutely loved this game, and it's true. Very fun one. I just said that like for the past 5. That's why it's on my list, because they are very fun to me.
All right, my number 5 is Fromage. Fromage is a game that is all about cheese, obviously, but the player...
Obviously.
Well, it's French for cheese. You have this circular board. It's divided up into these quarters. But each quarter of the board is kind of like its own little mini game of how you're trying to arrange things in draft. The action selection is really cool. It has these little kind of arrow-facing guys that all kind of determine what you're able to do and how you're able to do it. There's even an expansion I got a chance to try out recently as a playtest situation, and it adds 4 new little pie slices of mini games, so you can kind of mix and match which ones you want to use at which time. It is a blast. It is a super fun game. I don't know. I recommend that highly.
All right, my number 4 is Chronicles of Light, Darkness Falls Disney Edition. I hate how they make their titles so freaking long. It's like annoying. So this is a cooperative game. You're playing all of these very like go girl female Disney characters as you're going across this board and completing missions. Go girls! But one of the things that I thought was extremely clever in this game is you couldn't really quarterback anything, and nobody could really take control, because in order to win the game, not only did you have to get rid of all the darkness, but every player has a certain mission that they had to accomplish in order for you all to win the game. And oftentimes those missions required the help of other players. So I just thought that was a really clever way to take a cooperative game and make it fully cooperative, instead of one person kind of just does everything while other people just exist in the game. You actually all of the players actually all have to participate the entire time. So I thought that was really clever. I liked it. It has a module board, and so it's going to be a little bit different every single time you play.
My number 4 is Iron Forest. If you've ever played Ice Cool, it is a game where you are kind of flicking these penguins around, trying to meet these various objectives and go through certain things. But you also have one person who's kind of chasing you down, the hall monitor who's chasing you down in school, because you're not staying in class and learning. So this takes that same idea and takes it from a family, kids kind of a game to a full-blown strategy game of sorts, a tactical combat strategy game. First of all, you have the same board, but then you have a double-layered board. So you have literally 2 tiers to this board, and you can not only can you flick the things around, it's a dexterity game, you also have a little catapult that flings things from the ground up to the top tier. So there's a whole bunch of different scenarios that you can play. Each scenario has 2 teams against each other, and you can play 1-on-1, but you can also play 2-on-2.
Yeah.
And there's all these different ways that you can play. Every different scenario sets up differently and has different objectives that you're trying to meet, so it has a ton of replayability. But it takes that kind of that I don't know, it feels like that childish method of flicking stuff around. It takes it to a place where it's much more strategic and adult. You know, you don't feel like a kid. I feel like I'm strategically flicking stuff instead of just like flicking a penguin around.
I'm not playing with a toy. I'm winning the game.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly the difference.
All right, my number 3 is Courtesans, and this is a card game. What you have is you are trying to get the most points, like always. But anyway, there's the court in the middle, and there's all these different characters. And what you want to do is manipulate that while you're also manipulating your own court. You place a character in somebody else's pile, you place a character in your pile, and you place a character in that middle board. What you're trying to do is either have people be in favor, out favor. If they're on the top of that board, they're in favor. If they're on the bottom of that board, they're out of favor. In favor, you get the points. Out of favor, not good. And then at the end of the game, you score the ones you have. What I think is so fun about this game and so tricky is the fact that when you draw your 3 cards, sometimes you want to get rid of all of them. Sometimes you want to keep all of them. Sometimes you would like to use all of them to manipulate the courtesans. But you can't. You can only play one to yourself. You have to play one to yourself. You have to play one to an opponent. And you have to play one to that main board. It is a lot more challenging than you think it's going to be. Of all the games I've played, I think I've only won once. For some reason, our 7-year-old just gets this game and she demolishes us. Maybe it's that she doesn't get it. Maybe it's because she's just playing willy-nilly and just putting cards wherever, and it always just happens to work for her.
I
or
think
she's
she's
a
just
secret genius.
Savant. Yeah. My number 3, this is one Bethany talked about earlier, which is Forges of Ravenshire. I love this idea of building up all these different resources because of all the cool dice mechanisms that Bethany mentioned, but then using them to create these various shields and weapons and armor and things that you're selling. There's kind of common goods, there's rare goods, and there's different kind of ways to upgrade your own system too, to make everything more efficient. So when you turn steel into iron, is that how it works? Steel into iron? Yes, when you turn steel into iron, you can do it more efficiently, or whatever the case is. So I like how you can upgrade your own board and make your engine just turn faster and faster, because you don't get a lot of actions in this game. Each one just matters a whole ton. So building an engine is my favorite part of that game.
My number 2 is Harvest, and this is a game where you are going to the harvest. You have this plot of land and you're cutting trees down so that people can build buildings. You're using those buildings to do other things. You have like pumpkins that you're growing, you have strawberries that you're growing, and then you have this shared market that you are going to. Its worker placement and that aspect of the actions that you can do. I really, really liked this game. This is one of the games this year that I enjoyed so much that I had to learn how to play it solo because I wanted to be able to play it by myself, which I did multiple times. I really enjoyed the solo aspect of it. It's actually almost exactly the same as the 2-player aspect of it, so it's really easy for me to learn to play this solo, but there is a campaign mode where you play with the different characters and you try to hit this criteria. Anyway, I really enjoyed Harvest. It was a good game.
Okay, thanks. You heard it here first, folks. My number 2 is A Message from the Stars. What a bizarre, wonderful game. I played this, the first time I played it was at a convention with Joe Wiggins from Allplay, and it's a full cooperative game. I was just blown away by how weird and creative it was. It's a game where you have the Close Encounter of the Third Kind situation. You have an alien who's visiting, and we have our scientists here on Earth who are trying to communicate with it. It's trying to communicate back to us. Neither one of us speaks the same language, so we're trying to figure out how to communicate to each other. The way that plays out in the game is you have these different words. Each word contains letters, obviously. All the letters have some meaning ascribed to them, whether it's a positive value or a negative value or a multiplier or whatever the case is. And so you're sending words back and forth to each other. And you're given a score, and you have to use deduction to try to figure out what that score means and trying to break down what letters could possibly be which things. And then ultimately, what's the message that you're trying to send to each other as well once you've figured out what the different codes mean. So it's a really, really fun game that uses just a crazy part of your brain that I don't know, I can't hardly describe it. This is not a game for everybody, I fully recognize that, but it is one of the best deduction games I've ever played.
Yes, I have also played this game. Anyway,
she's one of the when I say not for everyone, she's who I'm talking about.
I'm one of the everyones. Okay. My number 1 is River Valley Glassworks, and oh my gosh, did I ever enjoy this game. I liked this game so much. It's probably one of my favorite games of all time, to be honest. I loved this game. So in this game, you are drafting these these pieces of glass onto your player board. You are trying to get the most points, but you have these columns going across. If you get to the highest 2 is what scores at the end of the game, but the further along you go down is where the most points happen. However, the rule placement is as soon as you place like this orange one right here, the next orange one has to go on top. So you're trying to get your rare stuff in the beginning and your common stuff at the end, but that doesn't always happen with how the pieces come onto the board. I love that the pieces are double used, so you're getting the colors to go on your board, but you're also getting the shapes to place in order to draft those colors. So I just really like that it had that those one stones were being used for 2 different ideas. I love when you can do that in a game. I mentioned that. What was that other game? I mentioned it too. I really liked it when you do that double use thing. Anyway, really like that. Oh my gosh, enjoy this game. This was another one that I played solo. I have taken this to work with me multiple times so I could play it on my lunch break when I really should be going for a run. But it's okay. At least I'm engaging my mind if I'm not engaging my body. So much fun.
All right, my number 1, my favorite game in 2024. This is Lord of the Rings, The Duel for Middle-earth. Oh gosh, I kind of mentioned how there's 7 Wonders and there's 7 Wonders Duel. This takes 7 Wonders Duel and takes it in a whole different direction. It takes a lot of the same mechanisms of drafting the cards. It keeps that basically identical, but it adds in a whole new other ways to win. There's 3 ways to win. So you have one team which is playing as the armies of Mordor, and one is the Fellowship of the Ring, the good guys. There is 3 different ways that you can win. You can win via this track where either the Ring Bearer gets to Mount Doom, or the Ring Wraiths get to the Ring Bearer, and that can be if either one of those happens before the end of the game, that player wins. You can win by way of taking over the different races of Middle-earth. So there's like Ents and Dwarves and Humans and Elves or whatever. If you're able to get a variety of those, you can win the game that way as well by playing cards and by winning these tokens. And the third way is this map, which is an area control map. And if you're able to be represented in all these different parts of the map, you're going to win via that. So, and if the game gets to the very end and no one's won, it kind of differs back to the map and who has the most control. So that's kind of the different ways that you can win. It takes that 7 Wonders Duel system of drafting cards and has all the win conditions and puts it in the Lord of the Rings world. It streamlines some things that probably needed to be streamlined anyways, but also adds new ways to look at things also. So it's not necessarily just streamlined. It's not just simpler, which I think is important when you're dealing with a big IP like that.
Yeah.
If you're a Lord of the Rings fan and not a board gamer fan, you might pick something on the shelf and end up hating it because you don't know what you're getting yourself into. Yeah. So I do like that they streamlined some of those more complicated things, but at the same time, I like that they made other things very new and different and just a whole new way to think about that system. I really enjoyed Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle-earth.
Everybody, that's it. That's the end. We did our list. Our top 10 games of 2024.
What are your favorites? What are the ones that we missed? What are the ones that you thought on our list were awesome? Which ones that we maybe didn't play that you would recommend us that we get a chance to play? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to get a chance to play those too and maybe put them on a future list of games we've played later on or whatever the case is.
Well, everybody, don't forget to subscribe so you can see our videos as they come out. Until then, you can find us in all of these places.
You guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye. You guys, thanks for watching our shenanigans. As always, we appreciate it. Over here, if you follow this link, you're going to find a playlist we've handcrafted just for you because you watched this video.
And if you check over here, this is a video that YouTube thinks you might like. So you can check that out if you want as well.
All right, we appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much for watching, and we will see you next time.
Bye.